Planned obsolescence. Planned obsolescence is a practice adopted by companies to produce consumer goods that rapidly become obsolete. The main idea is simple. The sooner a product breaks or becomes outdated, the sooner people will replace it with a new one.
Purposefully creating inferior products to drive sales, a symptom of late-stage capitalism that has since been coined planned obsolescence.
What happens to all these broken phones? Well, they create massive environmental problems.
This is my iPhone 5. In 2 months, I would have used it for 3 years. You see, it's really banged up around the edges, but I still did not crack the phone. I've had previous versions of the iPhone before, and what I've noticed is that every time I upgrade the OS, the whole thing gets a little bit slower. It may not be very noticeable the first time that you upgrade, but if you upgrade the OS maybe 2-3 times, you'll start to see it slow down. Now, there's no reason to force you to get an update that makes your phone slower, other than trying to make your phone slower and slower so that you would actually upgrade later on. Now, on their end, there's no real proof saying that they're actually doing this on purpose. It's kind of like using hard disk space. When you have it, you tend to use it up. So I assume those guys in Cupertino, they have all this faster and faster iPhone hardware each generation that comes after. They might go, oh yeah, let's use all this fancy graphics because they have all this extra CPU cycles to use. So even when you're at the home screen and you're just moving it around, it's going to use more and more CPU power as you upgrade the OS. Now, if they're designing it to the latest hardware, every single time they upgrade one of this hardware, it's like, oh, 1.5 times faster, 2 times faster. That means if you upgrade to the latest OS on your older devices is going to be 1.5 or 2x slower.
Hey, my name is Will. I like programming. I'm doing a certificate course at MIT for full stack engineering. I like object detection. This is a simultaneous localization and mapping program that detects objects in 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. I am currently trying to optimize it so that I can connect it with my drone program in Python and my navigation programs and have all of them running at once. This was a toy mock-up that I followed George Hotz with, and this is my drone and my navigation map for the bus route between MIT and Harvard. It maps all of the actual longitudinal and latitudinal points, and the drone is being programmed with Python. I love Arch. I've put it on this computer, a Chromebook, a Lenovo ThinkCentre, as well as a Lenovo laptop, and I have a lot of devices. I'm kind of addicted. There's some de-Googled devices over there. This is Mark Dollar. He gave me this Mac Mini, and though I love it, it had some issues, and I wanted to figure out what those issues might be. This is my deep dive into whether or not Apple products will behave better after fresh installs and updates, or whether those updates actually cause the devices to become corrupt. When Mark gave me that Mac Mini, it rebooted to Yosemite, and so this is a render of me putting El Capitan into the machine after rebooting with a fresh install of Yosemite. After that, I quickly went on to trying to do the next one, and that took quite a bit of time. The next was Sierra, and this is the process in which to do it. There is a support page on Apple that gives you every version type that were upgrades over the last decade or so. You click the link, download it, install the OS package, and that makes an installer app within the computer. That's what I was clicking on just there. And after many attempts of doing this, Sierra was finally installed from Yosemite and El Capitan. I moved on to High Sierra, this time within the App Store. That is where the download for the upgrade was. And this is a render of it taking a relatively short time to download and a shorter time to install. From this point on, everything was done within the App Store. You click the link, open it, go to the App Store link, download it, and then you go through this install menu and made it to Mojave. And after that, I went on to Catalina, Big Sur, and Monterey. At this point, Monterey was the last that I was able to continue to upgrade with. Ventura would have been after that, but the computer itself, which has a dual-core i5, was from 2011. So I decided that after I was done with that, I would work on this legacy iMac that I had gifted my mother for her birthday. I did not need it anymore. As you could see, I had many machines. And so I went about wiping everything that was in this machine and restarting from the beginning of its time. This is the recovery menu. You get to that by holding Windows R and then pressing the power button. And that takes you to a recovery menu where you can wipe the computer of its previous contents. And as long as you're careful not to wipe the installer itself and just the Macintosh HD hard disk drive, then you are able to be prompted into installing a fresh install, which is the UNIX best practices standard. Since I have a little bit of experience with different Unix operating systems, Unix-like operating systems, including BSD and Arch and a few others that I favor, I thought, well, this would be worth trying to give it a go, and then we can actually see whether or not it is updates and that wreck machines through planned obsolescence, or whether or not it's bad downloads, bad clicks, telemetry, spyware, malware, viruses. We all click on the wrong things sometimes, and sometimes we end up with refurbished machines that we received in a certain condition, and this, I have found, seems to be a wonderful way to be able to make these Apple products like new. I've done this with an M1 as well, and an iPhone and an iPad, and every single time, just like the gentleman at the beginning of the video that I screenshot said about his iPhone 5, doing only the necessary upgrades and doing fresh installs will keep a machine running and can stave off any possible planned obsolescence. I do understand that's a real thing that businesses do, but I also don't really like people telling me that I can't keep a machine, or that it's going to be e-waste, or that it's useless. And so this is me installing Xcode within the command line on my mother's machine, just to see if it will work. This clip right now is me copy-pasting a homebrew install command, and I will link these in the video below. Going back to my machine back and forth while I'm visiting my mother for the weekend, decided to do both of these at once and capture them. This is my mother's system before the safe boot. This is her system after the safe boot when I could not screenshot it. And that was necessary in order to be able to continue to do certain upgrades. This is Monterey finally working on my Mac Mini. Xcode is finally working on both machines. And here's a screenshot of it open to a test. And I am so grateful that I was able to give my mother a machine instead of it ending up as e-waste. This is the terminal in my new version of Monterey on this 2-core i5 Mac Mini from 2011, and doing a GCC install, which is a compiler that I use for several programming languages. And after I did my brew installs, my home brew commands that I showed earlier that I linked down below, all of my installs worked. This is a real computer now that can actually do some programming. It doesn't really have the hardware necessary to be able to do object detection and things like that, but for actually getting some ideas out and doing something with the computer other than browsing the internet very slowly, this is working great. The computer is snappy. You can see how well this computer is running. And it did not install a thing before, and it used to take 3 to 4 minutes at a time after I clicked something for anything to open. I have concluded that it is not only planned obsolescence that can wreck a machine, but a lack of fresh installs and monitoring of what gets in the machine that can cause it to become